So today what I'd like to talk about is sleep and its importance and also what causes sleep to go out of sync. So when I see people in my clinic, I'm very keen to understand how they're sleeping. What we know from the research is that sleep is very important to a person's mental health. It also has other impacts as well, so people who don't sleep well tend to be at higher risk of obesity. The obvious thing of being tired in the day. It can also look a little bit like depression as well. So when we're tired, we can be deflated, exhausted, we can be irritable. Some of the very similar symptoms that come with depression. In fact, what the research does show us is that if we treat people's sleep issues, sometimes their depression symptoms disappear. 50% or so will disappear. So it's really important that as a first port of call that we start to look at sleep. It's certainly one of the first things that I check out with somebody when they come and see me. So what is good sleep? What does it look like? Well, it can be extremely variable. Everybody differs slightly in their need for the amount of sleep they have, and so the idea or the old adage that we need 8 hours of sleep is inaccurate. We need to assess what does the person tend to sleep and what do they need to sleep in order to feel rested. Now that amount of sleep will vary not just from person to person, but it also varies over the lifespan. So when we are little and babies, we can sleep anything up to 20 hours a day. But the older we get, the less sleep we generally require, to the point of when we are 46 upwards, we will be looking at an average of between 5 to 7 hours sleep required. So we need to kind of bear it in mind. How old are you? Is it possible that you think or are wishing to have more sleep and you actually don't need it? Now, if we are trying to force our bodies to sleep and they don't want it or they don't need it, then chances are we might be spending lots more time in bed than is healthy, and actually that can potentially set up bad sleeping patterns. So we just need to kind of assess it a little bit. Now, what is good sleep? Well, good sleep is sleep that goes through various sleep phases throughout the night. So if we look at healthy sleep patterns, what we notice is that there's 4 phases of sleep. The person goes into phase 1, phase 2 goes all the way down into very deep sleep at number 4, and then they come up again, and they go in these cycles right throughout the night in what we call circadian rhythms that last about an hour and a half. So every 45 minutes we'll be either at the top part of our sleep in phase 1, which is light sleep, or 45 minutes later we'll be back down in deep sleep where it's very difficult to rouse us. Now in between, around about phase 1, 2, we're going to get something called REM sleep, which is where we dream and we'll be immobilised and our eyes may flutter, and it's at this point we may be dreaming and working through things in our mind. So we've got these various phases and they go up and down right throughout the night, and as the night goes on, our propensity, our need for sleep gets less and less, and then eventually when we hit a light part of the cycle, we might wake up and then it might be very difficult to get back to sleep. So that's what the pattern is. So sleep can be variable, it needs to be assessed. It also needs to go in that nice pattern, and we can break out of that sleep at any point in time. What is it that interferes with good sleep? Well, there might be things that you might have various issues in terms of finding it hard to get to sleep. Good sleep, for most people, if they don't have a problem, they are asleep within seconds of hitting the pillow. That's a sign that someone's got a really good, healthy routine around sleep. The body knows it's time for sleep, so as soon as they're in that safe place, the bedroom, the brain just switches off and goes to sleep. For others of us, we spend long periods of time trying to get to sleep, and that can be really quite a drain on us. So we can have that kind of pattern. We can have broken sleep where we wake up throughout the night, or we could have early morning awakening, often associated with many health issues, which is where we wake up way too early and it's just impossible to get back to sleep. So these are the patterns that can come about, and there can be various things interfere with that. Maybe if we're worried about things, we tend to worry about things, our mind starts to whirl, it might be difficult to either get to sleep or fall back to sleep if we wake up. It might be that we feel very upregulated, that we've got a very, very busy day, and it's only when we hit the bed that our brain starts to think and says, oh, here's the quiet space for me to do, and it starts to do it there, which isn't very helpful. Or we just feel really riled up and it's just quite hard for us to wind down. So our wind down is not sufficient, so we start to do it in the bed, which of course takes a bit of time to switch off. So we need to think a little bit about all these areas and thinking a little bit. So what I want to do in this video is just help you a little bit with what those good rules are. The next installation of video, I'm going to be looking at how you might try and get a problematic sleep pattern back into shape. But first of all, we've got to start with the very basics about what is good sleep and what does it look like. All these videos are really meant to sort of help you. I mean, they're not a replacement for good therapy. Intervening in a particular sleep pattern sometimes does need a tailored approach, but I'm just giving you at this point some general pointers so you can start looking at those areas yourself. So what is good sleep? Well, good sleep, we've mentioned, can be variable. We need to kind of bear in mind the patterns of sleep. So what is it that promotes good sleep? Well, good sleep is habitual. It needs a consistent pattern. Our bodies are very sensitive to being pushed out of line. So if we, for example, have a few nights, or if you see in children, if they have a few nights of bad sleep, sometimes it sets a pattern quite quickly. So that's frustrating, but it's also good news in that if we can get things back into a good cycle, it can shift and alter very quickly. The best kind of sleep is ones that are in blocks, so not sleep throughout the day or throughout the night broken, but actually one great big block. So for example, nighttime sleeping, where we just sleep and then we get up. So we try and keep it in one block. That's the most efficient, and the reason why that's helpful is that it allows for great opportunity to go down into phase 4 sleep, which is the repair sleep, the deep sleep, and that's the bit that's going to make us feel refreshed and feeling resourced. That's the one we really want to try and get to. But of course we need it to be in a block in order for the brain to switch down into that phase. If you have very broken sleep, it's often going to be very, very light sleep. So that's not very efficient in terms of feeling better. So what sort of things do we need to bear in mind? Well, we need to think a little bit about our sleep environment. We're animals. Our brain and our body needs to know that where we're sleeping is safe. It's not going to be interrupted, that it has a reasonable temperature, that the light is not going to interfere, that we don't do anything in that space, so we don't do reading or watching TV. We try and train the body to know that this place is for sleep. The only thing that should be happening is sleep or sex. Sex is a great way of helping sleep as well, but nothing else should be going on in that space. And we also need to think a little bit about the run-up to sleep time. So the body does need time to wind itself down. So the research tells us that a couple of hours before bed, we should be thinking a little bit about the wind down. So no big meals, try to avoid alcohol because that affects the quality of sleep again. I know some people drink to kind of help them get to sleep, but the quality won't be great sleep. In that 2 hours we don't do lots of exercise. We try and keep things steady, maybe have a hot bath, prepare for that wind down, and certainly at least an hour before bed, no IT or screens. Some screens can emit a blue light which mimics morning time light, and that will confuse your brain. So what we need to be doing is trying to switch that down at least an hour before bed, making sure that we keep an eye on things like stimulants, so things like tea, coffee, caffeine, hot chocolate, Coke, all have caffeine in it. They're stimulants. Smoking is also a stimulant. So trying to avoid these things just before bed. So things like, I think that's worth bearing in mind, is things like coffee has got a high caffeine content. It's also got a very long half-life, which means that it actually hangs about the body a long time. So really, if you do have sleep problems, you shouldn't be taking any coffee or caffeine after midday, otherwise it'll still be in your system. So these are things to be bearing in mind. Also your fluid intake, so do you have drinks of water before bed? The risk, of course, is that you're going to wake up in the night. If you can try and restrict that down, if you're having problems, then that would be also a good thing to do. Worries often creep up for people at night time. Maybe if you're very busy, it's the one time when you get into bed that your brain has an opportunity to just work through things from the day or helps you think about tomorrow. These are things that will interfere with your ability to shut off and let go into sleep. So ways around that are to perhaps make your lists or have a think about tomorrow before you get into bed. Perhaps have a pad by your bed, write it down rather than trying to hold it in mind. That will also be very helpful. If you can move your worry time to before bedtime, perhaps a period of time in the evening where you sit down, you reflect on things, you think about what you're worried about, so you can move your worry time away from the bedtime. That's also very helpful. So those are some tips of thinking a little bit about good sleep. Watch on, because I'm going to be talking a little bit about more problematic sleep and thinking about strategies and techniques for trying to help sleep get back into a good pattern. Okay, so catch me on the next video.